All right, what's up, everybody? It's Alex once again with another episode of the EOT News Flash, and it's time to go to war. That is right. War of the Spark drops next week, and of course, I am contractually obligated by some sick joke, I'm sure, somewhere out there in the multiverse, to review every single card for Limited. And if you've seen my reviews for both Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance, you know there's a lot of cards, and it takes a long time to do this, so I'm going to get a head start today and kicking things off with the white cards, of course. Before we jump into it, let's go over very quickly our grading rubric. We have 6 categories technically, 2 subcategories technically. Your sideboard cards, I'll mark those with an S, and those are cards that will only make your deck if your opponent presents a threat that card is specifically tailored to. You know, you won't main deck this card because there aren't enough threats that actually require that particular answer. And your Bs, or your build around me cards, are the cards that you need a really good deck built around them before they start functioning correctly. For example, Persistent Petitioners from Ravnica Allegiance is an example of a build around me card. The rest of our scale is as follows. Your 1s are the cards that you should probably never ever play. They're absolute chaff, you know, bottom barrel filler, you know, only in the most dire circumstances should you play cards that fall in that category. Your 2s are your filler. You know, your decks for Limited are mostly going to be made up of filler cards. You know, mostly commons and some weaker uncommons. They're good curve fillers. They don't have a really massive impact on the game, but they do help propel you to winning the game. Your 3s are your bigger, more powerful removals and creatures, and in some cases, Planeswalkers in this set. They're going to be the crutches of your deck, and the 4s are your absolute bombs, the most powerful cards in your deck that pull you into a color when you open your pack, you open your pool for Limited or your draft pack, you see the rare, the mythic, the Planeswalker, and you say, this is the color I'm going to play, and it's that card that's going to help me win most of my games. So, that's how we're going to do this. Let's jump right into things here with a Johnny's Pridemate, 1 in a white, uncommon, Cat Soldier, 2/2. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on the Johnny's Pridemate. Originally, this card's text was a optional trigger, but I guess they changed it just for reasons, I guess. And so the mandatory trigger is now there. But this is a really powerful card here, especially in a deck that has any amount of life gain, even, you know, small amounts, because with all the proliferate in this set, which we'll get to a couple of cards that have that in this color, the counters on Pridemate here can really get out of control. And you're going to hear me say that a lot of times in this set, because the cards that have counters will get out of control if you don't contain them, or if your opponent can't contain them, they're just going to lose. So I give it Johnny's Pridemate at 2.5 here. It has a bit of a build around me aspect to it, but enough of the set supports what a Johnny's Pridemate is doing that I think it's a pretty high inclusion in any white deck for sealed or draft. Next up, we have Battlefield Promotion. 1 in a white for an instant at common. Puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature. That creature gains first strike until the end of turn, and you gain 2 life. Boom, right onto Johnny's Pridemate, already a playable card here. This is a solid combat trick. You know, first strike is always relevant in Limited. You know, definitely to punch through those last points of damage or get your creature out of a sticky combat situation. And anytime you're able to proliferate those counters, just the cards get out of control, like I said. So I gave this a 2. I'm not going to be super high on playing too many copies of this. I definitely want a good surplus of creatures and a good way to take advantage of those +1/+1 counters by proliferating them into the late game. So solid 2, but not embarrassing filler either. Next up, we have Bond of Discipline. This is a 4 in a white sorcery, uncommon. Taps all creatures your opponent control. Creatures you control gain lifelink until the end of the turn. Now, this is a massive blowout. Unlike its blue counterpart, Sleep, which actually keeps those creatures tapped through your opponent's entire next turn, this is really a one-shot, and so this is probably going to be sitting at the top end of your curve in your more aggressive, possibly mid-range white decks, to help you just shut the game out completely. Or if you really need to get some life back to buffer your, to get into the later game, the life gain here isn't irrelevant either. Johnny's Pridemate says hello, and this is going to be a great way to claw back into a game that you might have been on the brink of, but you've got to be able to capitalize on this card. But I think once this goes into your deck, you've made the conscious decision to have this at a point where you're going to use it and make a massive swing on both the life totals and the board state. So really cool card, very powerful. Watch out for this one. Next up, we have the Bulwark Giant. 5 in a white gets you a 3/6 Giant Soldier at common. As it enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. This one I'm not super impressed with. We're going to see a bunch of common very high toughness creatures for a relatively, I'll say, inexpensive cost. 4, 5, and 6 is where those creatures are going to sit. And, you know, I can think back to like Wishcoin Crab. There was the black one from Guilds of Ravnica as well that I'm blanking on the name all of a sudden, the 4/5, that were like key pieces to the blue-black decks that needed a creature just to finish out the game after they had out-tempoed and destroyed everything else. Unfortunately, the giant here doesn't quite meet that criteria. It's a little too high on the curve for a white deck, and I'm not sure what the life gain is going to be relevant here. That being said, if this format is slower, especially with all these Planeswalkers running around and people having to worry about those instead of other creatures and their opponent's life totals, this might have a place in a more mid-rangey blue-white control deck, possibly more of a control, might even be a control finisher actually, but until I'm proven otherwise, this is a 1.5 for me. I'm just not super impressed by this card right now. Moving right along, we've got kitty cats! There are a surprising amount of kitty cats in this set. I think it's giving Innistrad a run for its money, actually. This is Charmed Stray, a single white common 1/1 cat with lifelink, and whenever Charmed Stray enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control named Charmed Stray. So this doesn't quite fit the Persistent Petitioners. You may have any number of this in your deck, but since this is a draft, or a limited sealed event, you absolutely can. You have upwards of 6 copies of this in your deck. Unfortunately, this is a build around me because you need a critical mass. You know, 1 or 2 copies in your deck just isn't going to cut it. There are better, you know, I'm not going to say they're better 1-drops because there really aren't, but there are better spells to put in your deck here. I'm just not super impressed by this card at all, unless you've just got like 6 or 7 of these little guys. At that point, you might have something, but I wouldn't bank too hard on pulling this off. But somebody, and you know who it is, I know who it is at my LGS, who will try and pull this off. It might work one time, but it's just a little too cute for me. The cat, very cute as well, but it's the format strategy, too cute for me. Next up, we've got Defiant Strike, an instant at common. Target creature gets +1/+0 till the end of turn, and you draw a card. Solid combat trick here. Your aggressive decks are going to love this. The +1/+0 is always relevant. Cycling's relevant for those aggressive decks who might not have a source of card advantage. So I gave this a solid 2 here. I'll be happy to put this in any aggressive white deck that I end up playing. Next up, we've got Divine Arrow, 1 white instant at common that deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. This is a solid piece of removal here. I gave this a 2.5. This is going to kill almost everything in this format that's worth playing. There's a handful of rares and mythics that this obviously can't finish off, but virtually anything else in this format will die to this almost instantaneously. Or if you have to block, fine. But this is a really powerful piece of removal. If your pack is weak in draft, you know, I'm happy to take this as my first pick. You know, this is going to make any white deck that I play in limited super powerful limited format staple right here. Keep an eye out for this one. This is a great piece of common removal. This might as well just be Doomblade at this point because we know we're never getting that card back. That might be hyperbole. Might. Next up, we've got the Enforcer Griffin. Griffin, 4 white, 3/4 flying Griffin at common. There's nothing special about this guy, unfortunately. It's a decent mid-range flyer, but it's going to be so easily replaceable by so many other, you know, premium 5-drops. Even some 4-drops completely outclass the Griffin here. So if you're scrapping for that last couple playable, or you just need another piece for your flyers deck, you know, flyers are always getting limited. You might be able to do better than this, but I wouldn't be embarrassed to put this in my deck. Solid 2 for me here in this case. Now let's get on to some cards that are absolutely absurd. Just completely absurd. This is Finale of Glory. X white sorcery mythic rare. You create X 2/2 soldier creature tokens with vigilance, and then if X is 10 or more, you also create X 4/4 angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance. This is so nutty. Like, ever since I got really back like heavy into Commander, I started viewing cards like this in a much more positive light. You know, this is not playable in limited, or I mean standard for that matter, but this card is just nutty in EDH. Like, my Amara deck is going to love this. But this isn't an EDH review. That's coming soon, though. This is a really powerful card, obviously. You know, at any rate where X is 3 or greater, you're getting a really great return. Call of the Cavalry was a Dominaria, which was basically this for X's 2, and that's a fine card. But when you got something this powerful, you want to make sure that you can get the maximum advantage out of it. Hold it as long as you can. So anytime that you can make X be 3 or greater, you've got a really powerful card on your hand. Getting to 10 probably won't happen unless you've just got an absurd amount of mana acceleration, which this format really doesn't have a lot of. I wouldn't be, gunning on that to win the game for you, but this is a super flavorful card and really cool to see this. Unfortunately, you're just not going to get the full effect out of it in Limited. Next card, though, you will. Gideon Blackblade. We won't spoil what happens to Gideon here, but the next card I kind of does it actually. 1 white legendary planeswalker Gideon, mythic rare. He is 4 loyalty, and the text on this guy is so small. I gotta switch to the other screen. As long as it's your turn, Gideon Blackblade is a 4/4 human soldier creature with indestructible that's still a planeswalker, and prevents all damage that would be dealt to Gideon Blackblade during your turn. Wowza. His +1 ability gives up to one other target creature you control your choice of Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible until the end of turn, and -6 allows you to exile target non-land permanent. This is absurd. This card is absolutely unreal. I mean, if you can curve, a 2 into a 3 with this, and then your turn 4 is you attacking with Gideon and something else, I don't know how you're losing that game. If this is obviously any planeswalker unchecked is a game winner, but Gideon is so aggressively costed, so powerful, and so hard to kill unless it's on your opponent's turn. And if they're not pressuring you, there's zero way to beat this card. I think this is so good. And it's good we have a lot of common removal for planeswalkers in this set. Otherwise, this card would just be completely absurd. An absolute slam dunk of a planeswalker, an absolute 4, and I think this is probably on par with the most powerful Gideon we've ever seen. My opinion, maybe not true. Next up, we have got Gideon's Sacrifice. So sad. So sad. A single white instant at common. Choose a creature or planeswalker you control. All damage that will be dealt this turn to you and permanents you control is dealt to the chosen permanent instead. So this is a great way for both aggro and mid-range decks who really need a turn to untap, breathe, and stabilize. So you throw this out, you have everything your opponent swings at you all go to one, maybe even your weakest creature, or maybe a planeswalker you can't activate anymore because it's so low on loyalty, especially the uncommon one. So this is a really interesting trick. I'm going to need to see this in action to really get a good read on this one. But for now, I gave it a 2, but I think it's a good filler. But I do need to see this in action, like I mentioned, to really understand just how much of an impact this card can have. But my guess is it's a pretty sweet blowout. Next up, we have Gideon's Triumph. I love the Triumph cycle. I'll just say that right now. They're all so flavorful here, and the effects are quite powerful too. 1 white instant at uncommon. Target opponent sacrifices a creature that attacked or blocked this turn. That wording is super important. If you control Gideon Planeswalker, that player sacrifices 2 creatures instead. Now let's go back to that text there. That attacked this turn. A lot of times you'll just see attacking or blocking creature. That's super relevant. Usually those can be used within combat, and I might have some wording wrong here, so obviously check this with your judges, obviously. But because of the way this is worded, if they attack and you block, maybe let's say they attack with 2 creatures and you block with one of your creatures, kill their lesser creature, but their bigger one gets through, you can use this at the end of combat before the second main phase to take that creature out because it's attacked this turn. So recognizing that there are subsets to combat is a really subtle nuance to this card, and the players that can take advantage of that will get the most benefit out of this card. So don't just flash this out, as your opponents are making their attacks, because they're going to say, oh, well, I'll just sack my weakest creature, no big deal. Now you still have the 6/6 to deal with. Don't fall into that trap. Definitely play to all the angles with this card and really maximize the value that you can get out of this card. As it sits, because of that sort of flexibility and that trickery that goes into this card, I give it a solid 2.5. And now we're on to even more stupid cards. This is the God Eternal Oketra. That's right. If you haven't been following the storyline, Bolas has brought 4 of the 5 Amonkhet gods 2 Ravnica in their eternalized forms, and they're all zombie gods. Yes, so cool. 3 white, legendary creature, zombie god, mythic rare, 3/6, double strike. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. And this is the new god ability on it, where if it would die or put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into your library 3rd from the top. So the only way to get rid of these gods is to either counter it, or there's 1 card in blue that allows you to basically turn it into a frog. And we have some O-ring effects in this set as well, but they're really hard to get rid of. So thankfully these are a mythic rare, because these things are so damn hard to get rid of, and this is one of the more powerful ones here. It's an absolute 4. There's no way that you're losing the game with this in play if you can just continuously cast creatures with this in play. I don't see a world where you lose with this in play. Absolutely powerful, absolute 4, super powerful. Next up, we've got Grateful Apparition, 1 in a white flyer. When it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you proliferate. This is our first proliferate card, so let's check out proliferate. Choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of a kind it already had. So it's a lot of text. So that's +1/+1 counters, infect counters, loyalty counters, experience counters. If anything has a counter on it, whatever stupid name Wizards gave it, filibuster counter from Elocutors back in old Return to Ravnica, you can make more of with the Grateful Apparition, triggering its proliferate. This is a really powerful card. I like this quite a bit, especially in a low curve white aggressive deck, and it really starts to skyrocket in value as soon as you have any +1/+1 counters to start putting on your creatures. All those little beaters are going to get out of control the longer the game goes, and this card is just super good at making sure that engine goes, and might be a high priority target for your opponent to kill it on sight. And flying, never hurt anybody either. Next up, we have got Ignite the Beacon. 4 in a white instant, search your library for up to 2 Planeswalker cards, reveal them, put them in your hand, and shuffle your library. This is a build around me, despite the fact that there's so many Planeswalkers in this set. Obviously, you gotta open them first. Obviously, they have to be good to make your deck, and some of these walkers in this set are not good. So let's just put that out there right now. But if you got any number, of some of the more powerful ones, especially if you're in maybe a more control-y, mid-range, white-blue, white-black deck, this is a very powerful card to get those really powerful threats out of your deck, and it being instant is just ridiculous. I believe that Call the Gatewatch was a sorcery that put them into play, and there's one more I'm blanking on from Oath of the Gatewatch that it was at sorcery speed and tutored up for 1, I believe. But this is really powerful here. I like this card a lot, but of course you gotta have the cards in your deck to make it be powerful, and foil on this thing is gonna be pretty hot, probably worth a pretty penny. But anyway. Next we have the Ironclad Crowvod. What is a Crowvod? I don't know. 3 in a white, 2/5 beast common, and it's just flavor text. You guys remember Wishcoin Crab? Well, he's back. Unfortunately, he's in the wrong color. Were this blue or black, I can make a much bigger case for this, but unfortunately, he's just too ineffectual in a white deck. You want to be more aggressive in white in this set, I think, and this just really isn't the kind of card I want to be using. Yeah, the body's impressive. Maybe put some +1/+1 counters on it and keep it going longer into the game and kill somebody with it, but those games are going to be few and far between, so I wouldn't really be too high on playing this. I gave the Crowbot here a 1.5. Next up, we've got a seriously... This is a limited powerhouse right here. This card is just nutty right here. Lawrun Enforcer, 1 white, 1/2, common human soldier. You may pay 1 and tap it, and target creature with converted mana cost 2 or greater becomes tapped. I mean, we've had Gideon's Lawkeeper, and that tapped any creature, but that card's probably too good for limited nowadays. But this tapping literally anything. I mean, how many 1 CMC spells for creatures are you casting? Like, not that many of them. There's only like a handful in this set that I think are worth it. I mean, it's like maybe 2. But just this card alone, is going to invalidate so many of your opponent's bigger creatures, and just like instep, tap your big guy down, upkeep, tap your big guy down, swing with my forces, you're dead. Like, this guy's awesome. I want this guy in multiples. I will put this in any aggressive. I don't care what kind of deck I'm playing. If I'm in white, Lawman Enforcer makes the cut for me. 2.25 for me. It's a great early hurt filler and just gets absolutely absurd in multiples in any creature-based deck. Really powerful stuff here. Next up we have Loxodon Sergeant, 3 white, elf, and soldier at common, 3/3 with vigilance. As it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control gain vigilance until the end of turn. This is underwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. You know, the body is decent. 3-mana 4/4s are never, you know, always playable limited, and the upside is, you know, decent. But just, you know, I'm not really excited to play cards like this. I imagine you can find better 4-drops to fit into your deck. But if you do have, you know, a slightly more, you know, defensive-minded deck that wants to take advantage of that vigilance, you might have a place for this. I'll put it in my deck, but it's not going to be super powerful. It's a 2.25 for me, decent filler at best. Next up, we've got the Makeshift Battalion, 2 white, 3/2 human soldier at common. Whenever a Makeshift Battalion and at least 2 other creatures attack, put a +1/+1 counter on Makeshift Battalion. Now this is actually the battalion mechanic returning from Gatecrash, so a nice little throwback here to some older players out there. That's going to be super easy to trigger this, and if this goes unchecked, if your opponent can't answer this or you can't answer it, you will die to this. Flat out, you will die to this. And if you can just go 2, 3, 4, they're going to lose to this most likely. Great stats for the cost. And, you know, like I've said so many times before, the +1/+1 counters can and will get out of control in this set if this is not answered. Really powerful card right here. Solid 2.25 for me. Obviously has that build around me requirement, but once you get it going, hard to stop. Next up we have Martyr for the Cause. 1 white human soldier common. 2/2, as it dies, you proliferate. And this is decent filler, you know. There's plenty of counters that are going to be in this set, obviously. Loyalty, +1/+1 counters, everything like that are flying around here. And so there's going to be some value to get out of this card, but I wouldn't, you know, go out of your way to jam too many of this in my deck until I actually have the value I can get from it. Let's keep going on to just an absurd card. Like, every color just has like a card in it that I just have to look at and go, what on earth? I mean, you know, the gods obviously powerful, but this is just like on a level that I can't quite comprehend in terms of power level, but it's also super expensive, so I don't know what's going to do with it. But this is enough rambling. This is Perihelion 2. This is literally Sacred Foundry transforming and turning into a helicarrier a la Avengers. That's awesome. 6 white, legendary artifact, vehicle, rare, 5/5, first strike, flying, vigilance. When it attacks, create 2 4/4 angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance that are also attacking. You crew for 4, you attack with this once, and you crew it into the end of time. This card is pretty ridiculous. Obviously, limited games, especially sealed. Draft, not so much, but limited games of sealed do go for a relatively long amount of time, and this card, if you untap with it, I mean, it's 13 points of damage you're attacking for, and the next turn it just goes up so much. Like, this isn't linear growth, this is exponential growth that you're hitting here. So just, this card is absurd. You know, fortunately there are plenty of ways to destroy artifacts in this set, so if you see this coming out of your opponent's deck, get this into your pool and start blowing this thing up as fast as you can, because this is a very, very powerful card. The only downside, it costs 8 mana, but I still give it a 3, because it's super cool. Next up we have Pouncing Lynx, 1 white, 2/1. It's a cat, it's common. As long as it's your turn, Pouncing Lynx has first strike. It's decent filler here, and it's a solid aggressive creature. Just keep it going sideways. You never really want to keep this thing back. If you have any combat tricks to go along with it, awesome. But as it sits, just a solid 2 for me. Next up, we've got the Prison Realm, 2 white uncommon enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Prison Realm leaves the battlefield, and as it does in the battlefield, you scry 1. So Oblivion Ring with upside. There's a very limited number of enchantments in this set. even less of them are worth actually playing. So it's less likely you're going to be hit by some of the actual removal for enchantments in this set. So it's unlikely that you're actually going to see this thing blow up at any point. This is a really powerful piece of removal here. Like I mentioned with Divine Arrow, if the pack is weak, I will gladly take this first pick here and just use it as part of my defensive strategy for my deck. The one thing I don't like about this card is the art. It just feels so underwhelming. Like, this is Bolas's prison. This is where he will spend the rest of eternity. In my mind, I imagine this vast empty landscape of maybe some pretty colors and just the most minuscule, the most barely recognizable figure of Bolas in the middle of the art, showing just how truly trapped and alone that he is. But hey, I'm not an art director. I just play the cards, but as it sits, solid 3. Next up, we have Rally of Wings. 1 and a white, instant, uncommon, untaps all creatures you control, and creatures with flying you control get +2/+2 until the end of turn. This is a really interesting card. Obviously, flyers are always good in limited, and if you're playing a blue-white flyers deck, this is basically just like I win button, essentially. The untap is really powerful, especially at instant speed, so this can be used as a pretty solid blowout to just swing out. Your opponent takes the damage, thinking they can kill you on the backswing, and you just untap in response to their attacks. Pretty cool trick here. It's a 2.25 for me. I mean, this is one of those cards where I need to see it in play, obviously, so really get a full appreciation for this. But my inkling is that it's very, very good. Next up, we've got Ravnica at War, one of the very first spoiled cards for this set. 3 and a white sorcery at rare. Exile all multicolored permanents. I double-checked my math. There are 37 multicolored cards in this set that this can hit. I don't know if that's enough to mainboard this. It might be. It probably is. Obviously, you want your opponent to have enough targets for this, and if you don't, it's like, this is a sideboard card, flat out sideboard card. There are other Wraths in this set that just do the Wrath thing, but this is fortunately is not one of them. This is probably more of a constructed standard card or EDH card, most likely. But as it sits, you need your opponent to have a pretty critical mass of multicolored threats to bring this in against. But if you can catch, like, let's say 2 or 3, you're gonna be happy. Even one creature, one super powerful, one Niv Mizzet, one Nicol Bolas Dragon Pharaoh or God Dragon will be worth you playing this. But they've got to have it, otherwise leave it in the sideboard. Next up, we have Rising Populace. This card is really cool. The flavor on this is just amazing. 2 and a white, creature human, common, 2/2. Whenever another creature or Planeswalker you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Rising Populace. It's an Aristocrats style card effectively here. I gave this a 2. There's enough cheap creatures in this set that this can get out of control. But it is easy to block. That's the problem. You're not going to just, this thing's going to hang back for a number of turns. And most likely your opponent's going to be like, well, I won't block it, and just keep taking the damage and just building up their board state until the point where this thing can be handled pretty easily. But if you can get in a situation where your opponent is having a hard time containing your board state, this can get out of control very, very quickly. And obviously, with Proliferate in this set, this is a really good card to pair along with that. So I give this a solid 2. I think I want to see this in a very, very aggressive white deck. And at that point, the grade might move up just a little bit. Next up, we have Single Combat. Nahiri and Sorin are so pissed off at each other. Literally, the end of the multiverse cannot stop them from bickering like schoolchildren. This is amazing. 3 white, rare sorcery. Each player chooses a creature or planeswalker they control, then sacrifices the rest. Players can't cast creature or planeswalker spells until the end of your next turn. This is nuts. So, obviously, they'll keep their best threat, but so will you. And if you're playing this card, you're most likely engineering the situation to the point where whatever the outcome is, you're going to win this single combat, quite literally. Especially if you have this paired with any other removal spells. And just the fact that this just really boils the whole board down just to like one-on-one, like literally one-on-one combat is such a cool flavor win. This is a solid 3 for me just because of how much power there is in mass edict effects, especially if your opponent has a Planeswalker or two, and, plenty of creatures that, you're trying to get rid of because your one guy is just that much better. Awesome, awesome card, awesome flavor, solid 3 for me. Next up, we have the Sunblade Angel, 5 and a white, gives you a uncommon Angel 3/3 with flying, first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. Dear God, if this thing survives, you're not going to win the game. You can't beat this thing if it survives. If they can't beat it, you will win the game, most assuredly. This is a solid 3 for me. Just flat out, if this Angel survives, any number of untapped steps, just get out of here. The card's absurd. Yeah, there's not much to say about some cards. Nuts. Super powerful uncommon cards. Card is so juiced. Then we go on to this underwhelming individual. This is Teo, the Shield Mage. Gosh. Like, when they said they were going to do uncommon Planeswalkers, or even before they even mentioned that, they said 36 Planeswalkers. I'm thinking some of them have to be crap. Some of them have to be crap. And this one is. Teo the Shield Mage is a 2 and a white uncommon Planeswalker. Teo, 5 loyalty. You have Hexproof. That's good. Hexproof is good. -2, you make a 0/3 white wall creature token with Defender. Yeah, this one's bad. There's some relatively cute synergy here with another Planeswalker, Huatley, that gives these 0/3s a bit more utility. But beyond that, the creatures the sky is making just aren't worth it. We saw back in Guilds of Ravnica that anything with 0 power is basically useless because of Mentor being so powerful in that set. They're just completely useless, and we see so many +1/+1 counters in this set. Those 0/3 walls are basically going to get flattened like that. The Hexproof is nice. There's a couple of cards like JS Greeting and Band Together that are, relevant, to hitting players. But, this card is just so underwhelming. And this is one of the few Planeswalkers that I'm just not excited to open and not put in my deck. I gave Teo here, he got a 2. He's a Planeswalker. That's the only reason I gave him a 2, because he's a Planeswalker. That's it. Next up, we have an even more underwhelming card. We have Teo's Light Shield, 2 and a white illusion creature, 0/3 common. As it enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Marginally worse than Teo himself, but at least the counter is value 1.75. Moving right along, we have one of our first legendary other legendary creatures in the set. Here we have Tomik, the Distinguished Advocist. I don't know why they spelled Advocist with a K. Maybe they're being cool. Maybe that's a different word altogether. I don't know. But he is a white legendary creature, human advisor, at rare, 2/3, flying, lands on the battlefield, and land cards in graveyards cannot be targeted as spells or abilities your opponent controls. Your opponents can't play lands from graveyards. This card has got Lavinia Syndrome out the wazoo. You guys remember Lavinia from the last set, who said, players can't cast spells with CMC with more than lands they control. If they paid 0 for a spell, it gets countered. Basically, this thing has 0 text other than you have a legendary flyer. Limited. There's literally 0 relevant text on this. And it's even actually kind of tricky to cast. White on turn 2, doable, absolutely doable in your 2-color decks. But there's just an off chance that you might not cast this on curve. So as a 2/3/2/2, that's about it. I love when Wizards does this because there's a handful of people at my shop. And I'm not faulting them for what they do. Everybody play the card they want to, but they slam Lavinia against me. And I'm just like, all right, what? Good card, right? I'm like, yeah, good card for Vintage, for Legacy. I'm gonna attack you with it. I'm like, all right, that's cool. My vanilla 2/2 just killed your Lavinia. Your legendary creature just died to my 2/2, my cat. Jeez, Wizards. I love when they do this. This just makes me happy. It's a cool card, no doubt about it. It's a hate bear card, fine, but seriously, just a 2. Next up, we have Topple the Statue, 2 and a white instant at common. Destroy target Planeswalker, or destroy target permanent. There we go. If it's an artifact, destroy it. Then you draw a card. I love the flavor of this. You know, the fact that the statue of Bolas is falling down. Literally, you know, his monument to himself is coming down. And it just kind of signals the end of him. You know, it's super cool. Sideboard card, obviously, here. You know, obviously, if they've got some of the bigger artifacts like Perihelion, there's a couple artifacts we'll get to much later that actually are relevant targets for this. But as it sits, this is just a sideboard card. I'm not going to main board. You know, obviously, you know, we saw plenty of enchantments and even the lockets in guilds and allegiance that were relevant to main board. And, you know, cards like this would be main deckable, especially like in best of one on Arena. But I don't see those cards in this set, so don't use sort of like that past knowledge thinking that this is a playable card in Limited. You know, the tap is nice, as is the cycle, so there is a world where this is actually main deckable. I'll amend my rating here right now. If you are playing a more defensive black-white, blue-white deck, this is actually pretty useful. Tap a thing, draw a card. That's a really powerful effect. So I think this might be a 2. I think this is a 2, actually. You know, just have plenty of ways, you know, to take advantage of this, especially going to late game. You just need to untap one big guy, draw that last card, find that removal spell, find your big creature, find your bomb. So, yeah, this is a 2. This is a 2. And it has the best rewards on mana cards. Draw a card. So, yeah, that's a 2. That's a 2. Changing my grades in real time. Moving on to the Trusted Pegasus. 2 and a white Pegasus, common 2/2 flying. Whenever it attacks, target attacking creature without flying. I believe this is the first time where this text has been changed, because usually it's just other creature you control that's attacking also gains flying. So things that were already flying could now have double flying, but that's not a thing. This card's always playable. I don't care what you call it. You know, Concordia Pegasus, Pegasus Buddy, Pegasus Cavalry, whatever you call this card will always be playable in Limited. The 2.25 for me, this effect will always be seen in every Limited set, I would imagine probably till the end of time. Awesome card, and if you've been following all of the spoilers, you know that this is kind of like the setup to sort of the fall of Gideon. And it's like a 4-card story. Super cool. And we'll get to the end of that story in black. Next up, we have the Wanderer. Who is the Wanderer? Nobody knows. I thought it was Ugin, honestly. 3 and a white, legendary Planeswalker, uncommon. Prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control. Now, this is actually the card I was thinking of. We're looking at like Jaya's Greeting and Band Together, which are like the fight cards and the burn spells. But 5 loyalty to start with, -2, exile target creature with power 4 or greater. This one's kind of weird. You know, I give it a 2.5 because, you know, Smite the Monstrous is playable. And for 4 mana, you get 2 Smite the Monstrous. And you get even more power to just defend yourself against opposing burn spells, direct damage spells. So the Wanderer is quite powerful here. The rating goes up exponentially if the -2 is relevant and, you know, commonly seen as going off, you know, in every game. Like, not having a target for this is terrible. And a lot of the Planeswalkers at common, or uncommon I should say, need to have an immediate impact. You can -2 or minus whatever. They need to do something that turn they play. They just can't sit there. And that's how I've been grading a lot of the Planeswalkers in this set here. So the Wanderer here is a 2.5 for me. I do like her. I think that she is quite powerful, and having repeatable removal on a pretty hard thing to remove, especially if your opponent is playing red or green that has those direct damage spells. They're going to have a hard time getting rid of this. And anything you can proliferate those counters to get another activation of the exile ability will be quite powerful here. So 2.5 for me. I might not first pick the Wanderer, but I'm not going to be unhappy to have it in any white deck that I'm playing here. Next up we have Wanderer Strike. Look at that. 4 and a white sorcery gives you a common removal spell, exile target creature, then proliferate. Look at that. 4 and a 5. 4 and a 5. Yeah. This is just good removal here. This is a 2.75 for me. 5 mana unconditional removal is kind of the sweet spot for limited, especially at common. So that, and the only reason I'm not giving it a 3 is because it is common and because it costs 5 mana. But other than that, this is super powerful. Even quick aggressive formats, there's still a place for cards like this. But with all these Planeswalkers in this set, all this proliferating going on, I think this is going to be a premium piece of removal. So definitely, again, I mentioned, if a pack is weak and this is in there at a common slot, you'll be happy to take this, I think, as a first pick. And this should make every white deck that you play. Next up, we have the War Screecher. This is a 1 white, 1/3 common bird, flying, pay 5, a white, and tap it. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn. This is a really interesting card. I mean, it's a common, which is, a bit of a funny thing to say about commons. But it's kind of interesting because it plays a really good role early and late game. Obviously, it's a good beater on turn 2 and onward. But even to the late game, when this thing has been outclassed, the Anthem might actually be relevant. How relevant it is, that's yet to be seen. I need to test this one in limited before I can actually give it a really solid rating. As it sits right now, though, I gave it a 2. It's good filler, has application both early and late, like I mentioned. So I wouldn't be embarrassed to play this card in any white deck that I'm playing, especially more aggressive ones where maybe I float it out a little bit. I can take advantage of those extra lands that I've drawn. And that is it. White cards are done. All right, we have 6 more. Blue, black, green, red, yeah, we got like 5. We have like 400 more of these videos to make. But I'm super excited about this set, as should you. The pre-release, if you're watching this in real time, is happening next weekend, the 26th. I'll be going to one on the following Saturday after I go see Endgame. So I'm going to be very, very tired that weekend. I can already tell. That's okay. That's okay. One quick note that I do want to point out here is, don't take what I'm saying here as gospel, ipso facto here. Obviously, these are my opinions on a set that I have not touched yet. I haven't played with any of these cards. But I'm using my knowledge of previous cards to evaluate and really make a judgment call on these things before I play them. So that way, when I do sit down for my pre-release or I sit down for my draft, I open a pack, I can make a pretty educated decision on cards that are playable. But don't take, like I said, this as fact here. So if you've got a differing opinion, if you're like, Alex, you're absolutely wrong on card XYZ, let me know down in the comments. The one thing that I always hate seeing Magic players do is saying, well, I think this card is great, this card sucks. Other person says this, and there's just an argument. There's no, oh, wait a second, so you've played it against that kind of deck, I've only played it against this kind of deck, so maybe I haven't seen this side of the card. And that's something that I think a lot of people really can take a lot of advantage of, especially early in a format. So as you're drafting, talk to your opponent, say, what did you think about this card? Did it do what you think it was going to do? And it's going to help both you and your opponent have a deeper understanding of the game, the cards, and the strategies built around them. So, you might think you're right, and your opponent is also thinking they're right, and you both are. But you're both wrong at the same time. It's kind of weird because nobody has the full picture of a Magic card, ever. There's always some new interaction to discover. So talk amongst your friends, your opponents, and really get a deep understanding of these cards. And then come back to this video, maybe in a couple of weeks, and you just kind of say, Alex was wrong on this card. Maybe I was right. Maybe I completely missed something about a particular card. And let's continue the discussion there. So that's going to do it for our white cards. Get ready for the blue cards. I'm going to be doing basically one of these every day up until, I believe, Thursday is my target date to have everything done. So tomorrow, Sunday, when we have the blue cards, black is on Monday, Tuesday is red, Wednesday is green, and then Thursday will be the marathon artifact, land, and gold cards. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it, as always. I'm super hyped for the pre-release. It's next week, like I mentioned. So watch this, take it to heart, evaluate these cards by yourselves, and just get out there and smash your opponents. We're going to war. So thanks for watching, guys.